Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. This is going to be my review for The Bad Batch Season 2 Episode 4. So, this was an interesting episode. I think the first thing that most people will note is that, my word, the tonal shift from Episode 3 into this one is crazy. And it certainly doesn't help what has seemed to be the sort of early season feedback that everything except the actual Bad Batch has been pretty good so far, but the Bad Batch themselves and Omega seem a little directionless. And this was, I think, kind of in a way the exact wrong episode to follow up what was a, nice, solid, but not what people wanted or expected two-part opener. And with what they seem to be suggesting here, it seems to suggest that this early section of the season is going to be more dealing with more odd jobs for Sid. Now a little bit of drama surrounding, can we trust her or not? And is she actually friends with them, or is it purely business? And it's one of those things where it's like, I think Sid is a perfectly fine character, but in terms of what I want out of the Bad Batch, it seems like her use in the show is an obstacle to what I actually want to happen in the show, which is that I think the Bad Batch need to move away from her to make stuff actually happen that I care about on the Bad Batch side of things. And it just feels like this is this distraction with Sid, them hanging out here, and it allows for them to have that sort of mission of the week format type thing. And in this case, we get the riot racing episode. And I want to make it clear here, in episode 1, The Phantom Menace, I love the pod race scene, because I think it's incorporated in really, really well, and it's made to feel important. I think the problem here is that I don't really care too much about the stakes behind this one, which is that, like, Sid used to be a criminal but is trying to improve, but has like debts and stuff like that, and here's her rival Motegi, or whatever his name is, and she's hired this droid racer who gets damaged, and so Tech has to fill in, and they Tech wins the race, so they're even, but the twist is sort of like, and how do you think Sid would have reacted if you had lost the race, sort of thing. That, I know her from the past. We're both hustlers. You think you can trust her until things kind of go wrong. And it's like, okay, I guess we're going to get some sort of a thing with Sid. And it really all is going to come down to, like, do you actually care about the character of Sid or not? And I'm like, she's okay, but I don't really want multiple episodes focused on her, because I want to care more about the Bad Batch. I still think all of those characters need more development, and they need to be involved in the more important stuff. And the one notable thing I think from the first 2 episodes was the idea that, like, Echo is sort of kind of in a way calling out the direction of the group, and that, like, are we just hanging around doing stuff, just looking after Omega? Or are we actually going to do something and commit to trying to take down the Empire or something like that? Are we trying to accomplish anything here? And it's, so far, it just feels like, I know we're only 4 episodes in, and that this show actually has quite a few episodes in its seasons. I want them to move along. I think just this was, just an example of, way too far towards the kind of filler end of things. I don't think it is full filler, because I think we are going to have some sort of a plot that will, I guess, be somewhat emotional involving Sid, but I wish we could just sort of, like, get to the show on that instead of having to potentially wait and do all this other stuff, because I'm guessing we will potentially get, like, what was happening with, I guess, Hunter and Echo potentially out doing something, wherever they were. That might be the next episode. I don't really know. I don't look too closely into what specifically is coming up next. I know they put out the titles for all of the episodes, but I'm not sure if we can make too much out about that. But we'll see what happens. the racing itself, you know, the way they sort of animated the action scene, again, it was nice. It was sort of different than the pod racing stuff, but still had that same sort of feel to it, where it's playing with it, it's fun, even though it's just actually really brutal and serious racing. And so, like, you had that odd moment where, like, someone in the crowd just gets killed by the racers, it's an accident, but someone in the crowd dies, and the commentary is just full on, like, basically joking about it, that, like, oh yeah, we're not responsible for any deaths, someone just died. And then the main setup when it comes to the race is that it's on a more kind of like properly kind of built track, rather than like a dust track using the kind of natural environment necessarily. And there's these 3 tunnels at one point in the course. The top one and was it the right one you can use, but you're not meant to use the left tunnel. If you use the left tunnel, you're going to die, basically, because they reveal later on in the episode a huge part of that tunnel is missing on the bottom. So you basically in a typical racer can't go through that part of the course, and that's basically how they win. The main gimmick here is that, like, Teo, the robot droid, he loses the race to Sid's rival, because he gets sort of like attacked by the Sebulba-esque tactics, basically, of using the kind of pincer movement and just destroying him right before he crosses the line. And then Tech wins by focusing more on, I'm just going to be very, very defensive. I'm going to put a lot of energy into the shields, not focus too much on having weapons and trying to take people out. That way I can just focus on the shields. And then he actually goes as far as to quickly go through the pits just to drop off the weapons so that his racer is quicker, so it can get through the tunnel by going up along the side and using the momentum to actually get through. Then he just tricks the kind of pincer movement into kind of taking each other out, and that's how he wins. And it's like Tech kind of out of nowhere just enters the race and wins, and it's like, Tech, okay, cool. Showing that more kind of analytical approach, because, like, I think the droid, who you think would be more analytical, was actually like, no, hey, like, you have to do the fighting as well, that's part of the show, and that's how you win. But Tech was kind of like, actually, you'll be more efficient if you just focus more on, like, defense and keeping your shields up so you don't get damaged, because I guess, you can't guarantee you hit all your shots, but you can sort of rely on the shield a bit more, which is what he did, and that's what kind of won him the race. Other than that, like, the Sid stuff with the guy, like, the amount of sort of, like, backstory on Sid that we got was effectively just that I guess she was much more of a kind of full-on hustler, kind of like criminal who would sort of, like, take advantage of people, and her former, like, associate here seems to think that she will ultimately revert to those ways, and that she doesn't actually care about the Bad Batch, and something is going to happen. And I think that's the main setup for, like, something that we will actually get to see here. Other than that, like, Wrecker was just sort of like here. Omega was just sort of here. It was her who came up with the idea, admittedly by saying, like, if we lose, she'll owe double, when she already owed, like, too much and she didn't have it. What it just really seems to highlight in some ways, where, like, if you really don't care about Sid, I don't blame anyone who just feels like, why on earth are the Bad Batch sticking around this character when she is now putting them probably at more risk than any benefit she offers them through the missions that she kind of gives them, because it is sort of becoming a bit of a liability here. So this very much is just like, if you like Sid, you probably found something in this episode. If you don't like Sid, you probably didn't like this episode. I think it was just very middle of the road. It was one of those, like, certain times in Star Wars shows where they have these longer seasons, they do this where they will have just this big shift of, like, how did we go from this amazing episode that everyone praised, episode 3, to this, which isn't even bad, but it's just like the difference between the Crosshairs, Rampart, Empire story with the clones being phased out and just the Bad Batch doing random missions is night and day. And the show is called The Bad Batch. It's not called, like, like Twilight of the Clones or something like that. And it just feels like, what do we want this show to be? Because I think this was probably a little bit too heavily leaning towards filler without anything significant enough in it. And it was just this, I think, a highlight that you don't know what to do with these characters, do you? Because the focus character of this episode was Sid. Omega Wrecker Tech didn't really stand out in it, outside of, once again, Wrecker was along for how big he is and his muscle. Omega is just being the young character who makes kind of stuff happen that's a little bit more chaotic. And then Tech is there to be the tech guy, and he happened to get involved in the racing. And that's the main, like, gimmick of this episode. So I just think, like, this show can be better. We know it's better from the last episode, and quite a few of the episodes, like, towards the second half of season 1. So I just hope that there's very few episodes in the rest of the season that are going to be like this, and that we can get more back on track, because I think we need to do that sooner rather than later. But that has been my review for the episode. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this one. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.